Hey, everybody, this is Rebecca over 60 and babyboomster.com. And today I'm interviewing author Suzanne Maggio, who is a big advocate for solo travel. There's never the right time to take a big adventure, but it's important not to put it off because you'll regret it. I can definitely agree with that. In her book, Estrellas, she shares the unflinching story of her walk to the Camino in Spain, which I think is amazing. And she was 60 years old when she did it. And then this summer, she went on another solo walk. This time it was the third leg of the Via Francigena in Italy. That sounds exciting too. I just can't wait to hear about it. When she's not doing stuff like that, she's a social worker and a psychology instructor. So thank you so much for being on this call.
No worries. So it's Suzanne. I'm very particular about that, which
Oh,
is
did I
very
say
funny.
did I say Susan? Oh
Yeah,
my
a
gosh,
lot
I
of
thought no, I thought I see it, Suzanne. I don't know why I read that like that.
it's
Oh, it's so
totally
funny.
fine because sometimes people say Susan and my mother, it's my mother's voice. Your name is Suzanne. It's not Susan. So it's so funny. So I often have to just remind people that it's a Z, Suzanne.
No, no,
Um,
I would have seen that. I probably just didn't have my reading glasses.
No worries, no worries. Thanks for having me, Rebecca. This is really fun. And I do feel very strongly about taking those adventures and not waiting because as we get older, and I just turned 65, so I did that walk 5 years ago at this point. You realize the older you get, the more you realize that your time is not unlimited.
Mhm.
And you need to get out and do the things you want to do. I'm very tickled to be here today to talk to you about that.
Well, I've been to Spain a couple of times, and the idea of walking the Camino was always so intriguing. But I kept thinking, I'm already 70, so I'm thinking like, I don't know what it takes to do it. I would just love to hear how much you actually walk and where you go and, how hard it is.
So you can do it. I walked with people who were in their 70s. I walked with people who were in their 80s. And I also walked with people that were in their 20s. So it is a journey that everyone can do. And what is different is that you just do it in the way that works for you. So it is a 500-mile walk across the north of Spain. You leave from a little town in France called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. You cross the Pyrenees. And then you get into Spain and you walk until you get to Santiago de Compostela, which is on the other side of the country. It takes 31 days, 32 days, 30 days, but you can take 40 days if you want. I have a friend who did it in 28 days, and he's the same age as me. Some people walk the entire walk. Some people walk sections of it, which I think is also a great way to do it. I have a friend who it took him about 10 years to walk the whole thing. So he would walk for a week, then he would go home. Then a couple of years later, he'd walk for another week, and then he would come home. And he did it. He did the whole thing. So it is one of those things that it really is something you get to do on your own terms. And we do have a saying on the Camino, everyone walks their own Camino. Everyone walks their own journey. The walk itself has a number of hostels and albergues and hotels and restaurants and cafes. So there's a lot of infrastructure. There's a lot of places to stop. I walked 15 to 18 miles a day, which is a lot of walking.
That is a
But you
lot.
don't have to do that. You can walk 10 miles a day and you can stay in an albergue or in a hotel or in a hostel. And then you can walk another 10 miles and it'll take you longer, but it'll be an incredible adventure. It is one of those things where, the more fit you are, the easier it is, but you don't
Mhm.
have to be an Olympic athlete to do it. It's just walking. And you can walk slowly, you can walk quickly, you can ride a bike, you can take a bus, you can take your car. There are people that do it by horseback. There are lots of ways to make that journey.
Oh, that's interesting to know. Yeah. You went as a solo traveler, right? So you didn't go with a group. So you're pretty much on your own. What was that like?
Well, there are lots of people that go with groups. It's funny because for me, I wanted to go alone because I wanted to push myself to be uncomfortable, to challenge myself to grow in ways that I had the opportunity by going solo, right? So you have to talk to people, otherwise you're alone. I'm an extrovert. I talk to people all the time, but at the same time, there are times when I feel self-conscious and I feel shy and I feel anxious. In this setting, it was like, okay, girl, if you're going to do this, you're going to reach out and you're going to start talking to people. You're going to have to be willing to go to a restaurant by yourself. You're going to have to be able to walk by yourself, right? To be alone as you're walking. And all of that stuff are opportunities for us to grow. On the other hand, if you're somebody that you'd like to benefit from a group, go with a group. There's so many groups that go, so many people that will take entire groups of people to walk and walk together and share that experience together. So either way is fine. For me, when I do these long walks, I go solo. I've done 3 of them now. As you mentioned in your introduction, I've just completed the 3rd leg of the Via Francigena, which is a Tuscan and Lazian walk. You walk from Lucca in Tuscany in Italy to Rome, which is in Lazio. It was a walk that was a bit shorter. It took me 19 days instead of 31, but it was life-changing in the same way that the Camino was. Via Francigena is gorgeous. You're in Italy. I'm Italian, so it was like coming home. The food is incredible. I met amazing people, and then I got to arrive in Vatican City, walking into Vatican City, which is just amazing. And the same was true when I walked the Santiago walk, because you walk into Santiago de Compostela, into the square of the cathedral. And it's a gigantic square. And the cathedral is enormous. And it's like this moment of, oh my God, I walked here. I walked here, which is,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just like
amazing.
unlike anything else, right?
Yeah, I've been to Lucca and Rome. So I kind of know we drove obviously, but yeah, it's such a beautiful area. Oh my gosh. I'm just like so jealous. Oh my God. So when you go on something like that, how do you plan it out? Like, how do you know how long you're going to walk or where you're going to stay? Do you just sort of stay wherever you can find? Because I would imagine if there are a lot of people walking it, it would be a little bit challenging.
So when you do these walks, there are fortunately people who have done them and written guidebooks. And in
Mm.
the guidebooks, it tells you what to pack, what to expect, how to get there, where to stay. So, and it also breaks it down into sections to walk. So you're not really, reinventing the wheel. You're just doing what others have done. And then, of course, if you're not going to walk the long legs like I did, you will have to decide where you're going to stop. But on the Camino, there are a lot of places to stop. On the Via Francigena, not so much. The Via Francigena is not nearly as trafficked as the Camino. There are thousands of people that walk the Camino every year. So you will never be alone. You will always see people. There will always be a place to stay. There will always be food to eat, right? There's not the same kind of like hit or miss that you get on the Via Francigena. So what some people do is they book all of their accommodations before they leave. There's good news and bad news to that. The good news to that is you know where you're going to be staying. The bad
Yeah.
news is you now have no flexibility. So if you can't make that distance in that day, or you arrive in a place and you think, I'd like to stay here a day or two. I really like it. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I would
What
imagine.
Yeah, so what
Or
most
the
of us
weather.
do, or the weather, although you walk in the rain too, right? Or if you
Mhm.
choose to, you don't have to, obviously.
Yeah.
What most folks do is they kind of book a couple of days in advance. So when you get started, I booked my first accommodation. Of course, I knew where I was going to stay in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. When you get to Roncesvalles, which is the first stop, it's over the Pyrenees. There are only 2 places to stay. One is a large, large, large albergue. It's a former monastery. They have, I think, can hold 300 people. So you can obviously make, if you know you're going to make that journey in one day, you can make that reservation. But from that point on, I think you get a sense of, how's it going for me? How am I doing? Is it a lot? Is it, just right? And then you can kind of look in the book. You can look on booking.com, which is what a lot of folks do, and you can find places in the towns that are coming.
Oh, okay.
If you're smart, one of the things to do to make sure you have an accommodation is to stay off the main stopping points. So in other words, if you're going to go from Roncesvalles to, where's that first stop? That's I'm trying to remember where the first stop is. The Roncesvalles to, oh, I can't remember at the moment. But anyway,
That's okay.
it's the stop that's in the book and everybody stops there. Well, stop the stop before, stop the stop after, right? So there you go.
Mhm.
You've got more accommodations. And with the Camino, you have a lot of options like that because the country of Spain has decided that they're going to support that pilgrimage. And so
Mm.
they facilitate those folks who want to create accommodations for pilgrims, whether it be food, restaurants, cafes, albergues, hotels, whatever.
So what kind of places did you stay in?
I stayed in a combination of things. Mostly what I did was to stay in pilgrim accommodations. And pilgrim accommodations are probably the simplest of the simple, right? You're usually in a bunk bed. You are sometimes offered the opportunity to have a community meal with the other people that are staying in the accommodation. You usually get some kind of a simple breakfast. In Spain, they have, pastries and coffee and orange juice for breakfast.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it's lovely. And you're around pilgrims. And that's the benefit, I think, to staying in those accommodations, especially if you're going alone, because you meet people.
Yeah.
You can't not meet people. If you stay in a hotel, you're in your own room, which is also lovely, I have to say. There were
Yeah,
a
that
couple
can be really
times,
nice.
yeah, there were a couple times in the walk where I said, you know what? I need like a real bed and
Yeah.
I need a real towel and I need to have quiet, no
Hmm.
snoring, right? No rustling in backpacks. So I did a little bit of everything.
So this is going to be a funny question, but like, what do you do when you have to go to the bathroom and you're in the middle of nowhere?
You go to the bathroom, you find a place to go. Some folks carry toilet paper with them. And of course, you have to pack it out. So there's that.
Uh-huh.
But, there are places where you can discreetly take care of your needs. The truth is, though, that there are so many accommodations on the Camino that actually only happened to me one time where I was
Oh,
in the
wow.
middle of nowhere. All the rest of it was, oh, we're going to stop for a cafe con leche. I'm going to use the bathroom while I'm at the
Right.
cafe, right? And it kind of worked out fine.
Right. And all those Starbucks and stuff that they have, even though they're not, you know, where you really want to visit and stuff, they're pretty reliable.
There are no Starbucks on the Camino, I do have to say. At least I
Oh,
didn't see
okay.
any. But there
Oh,
are
okay.
plenty of local cafes, plenty of
Right.
local coffee
Oh, and
shops.
they're the best. I mean, for sure. I remember just being in Europe where sometimes when you had to go, like when we went to a Christmas market or something, it's like you would go into the Starbucks and then, you just knew that you'd be okay or something.
Yep.
But yeah. But I know they have really nice facilities in Spain too. I noticed when I was there. I was really impressed.
Yeah, it's really lovely. It's really lovely.
It's
And
one of
I
my
have to
favorite
say,
countries.
yeah, mine too. I love it. The thing about Spain, which I think, in a way it's underrated because all the regions of Spain are so diverse from one another. The food is different, the scenery is different, the people are different, the languages are different. And, of course, they all speak Spanish because that is the national language of the country, but there are regional languages everywhere. When you're in Galicia, they speak their own dialect. When you are in Catalunya, they speak their own dialect. And that's kind of fun. It's really I think, a really exciting country to visit. For me, in addition to really just absolutely loving the scenery and having the success of the physicality of that walk, the real gift for me along the Camino was the people that I met.
Yeah.
And that's really what the book is about. The book is really about the way we grow and change and become educated and opened up when we take the time to meet people whose journeys are different than ours. And we are all on, there's the metaphor of the Camino, which is really the walk of life. We're all on a journey. We are all going through life. And in that walk, there will be obstacles, and everyone walks it slightly differently. It is really this amazing opportunity where you don't have to worry about your job, and you don't have to worry about, making meals for your family, and you don't have to worry about paying your bills, to really just settle in and embrace the experience of the journey and really be present with the people that you meet and the things that you see and the food that you eat and the sound of the birds. That was one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that was so remarkable for me. I thought to myself at one point, do the birds sing like this at home? Because I never hear it. Now I do.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Now I
So,
do.
so how physical was it? Like you mentioned you went over the Pyrenees, which sounds kind of like it's pretty difficult.
It was. That was the hardest day, without a doubt. The first day
Yeah.
is the hardest day of the whole walk. And it's a lot of climbing. And you go straight up for about 8 to 10 miles.
Wow.
But it's also the first day, so you're excited. And you have all that adrenaline going. In a weird way, it's like a good day for it to be the hardest day
Mm-hmm.
because you're excited. And
Yeah.
and so that's what happened. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other and you go as slow as you need to. There is a stop on the first day that is about 8 to 10 miles. Once you make that gigantic climb over the Pyrenees, there's a place where you can actually spend the night called Orisson, where you can stay, and there's a cafe there and a restaurant there. You can get a bite to eat, and some people stay. I met a group of elderly nuns the first night when I was sleeping in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port that were in my albergue. And that's what they were doing. And they were all in their 70s. And they had walked many times before. It was part of their prayer ritual. And that's what they were doing. They were just going to walk to Orison. That was all they needed to do that day. And they did it as
Wow.
slowly as they needed to. And they got there and they celebrated when they got there.
That's really encouraging. It really is. I know I did like about 10 miles over Lake Louise, in
Oh,
Canada.
gorgeous.
And it was funny because when I first started it, I was with my daughter and she had hired a guide to go with us. And I started walking up the hill and I was like, like this. And then he said, okay, he gave me some walking sticks and he just said, you just go steady. You don't try to be fast. You just go at your own pace and it just all, and then I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
never know. You mentioned that you found your Italian roots, I guess, when you went to Italy. Talk about that a little bit.
I was raised in an Italian family. Both my parents are of Italian origin. My grandfather emigrated from Rome, and my maternal grandfather immigrated from Rome, and my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandfather emigrated from Sicily.
Mm.
And so I was raised with a very culturally rich family. And so I've known, obviously, that I've been Italian for a long time, and it's always been very important to me. And I've been to Italy several times over the course of my life. And then when I was in my 50s, I had the opportunity to teach in Barcelona for the college that
Oh,
I teach at. And as I was heading over to Barcelona, I thought I would become an Italian citizen. I thought that it seemed important to me to kind of embrace not only my heritage, but also to really claim my citizenship. So I went through the process of getting all the documentation. It took months and months and months. And then right before I left for Barcelona, I applied to become an Italian citizen with the consulate in San Francisco, where I live. And by the time I returned from Barcelona, I had earned my citizenship. And I was very, very excited about that.
wow.
I don't speak Italian very well. My Italian is very poor. However, I have a dream someday that I will live in Italy. And
Mm.
so I have been quite a few times, but always as a tourist. And so when I had the opportunity to walk the Via Francigena, to really see this beautiful part of Italy slowly and really embrace my roots, I jumped at the chance. And for me, it really was much more than just the walk or trying to kind of meet this physical challenge. For me, this particular journey was to kind of claim my Italianness, if that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
To kind of walk and kind of put it on and say, okay, what does it feel like to say you're an Italian citizen? You belong here. You're not really a tourist. I have an Italian passport. I use my Italian passport when I travel. Although I have all of the kind of accoutrements of being Italian, I really wanted to know what it felt like internally to be Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was part of that journey for me. And so I got a sense of it, and I hope to go back very, very soon because it was really extraordinary.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to travel. I know that when we were in Italy, we tried to stay in just Italian hotels,
Hmm.
just to not to be in one of the big American hotels, sort of
Yes.
the Rick Steves kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it just made such a difference in, just the food, just, the breakfast, just getting to know people there and stuff. And it was really fabulous. And
Very
to
much
me,
so.
that's just the way to do it.
I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. I think that's true for travel in general. I think when we travel, what we want to do is we want to step into the experience of being in that country. We
Mm-hmm.
don't need more American experience. We live in America, so we
Yeah.
can get that experience here. So I agree with you. You stay in the little pensiones, you stay in the little
Mm-hmm.
hotels where the guy at the desk doesn't speak great English, right?
Yeah,
And instead of going to Starbucks, you go to a wonderful cafe and you have
sure.
your cappuccino and you have your cornetto and you embrace that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way I like to do it. Do you solo travel pretty much always?
Well, I'm
With it you
married
more?
and I have two kids, and so I love
Oh,
to
okay.
travel with them as well. My kids are grown now, but some of those, my favorite travel experiences are ones where our family is all together. But
Mm-hmm.
I do like to travel alone. Absolutely. I go on solo traveling to do these walks. Certainly, my husband is extraordinarily supportive of that.
That's
And
great.
yeah, it's fabulous. And then I'll go visit my kids alone, or I'll go see my brother or a friend alone. It's fun. I think it's important for us to do that. It's not always comfortable, but I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I've done that a little bit. Not so much like on a big trip to not to Europe or anything like that, but just, other places. And then
Mhm.
I write a blog about traveling in LA because I live in Los Angeles. And so I usually end up going to all these places by myself because I really love the idea of just not having to worry about somebody else's agenda or somebody walking too fast where you can't take, like, I like to take a lot of photos and things like that. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
just like want to stop and I want to just sit there and look at this door.
Absolutely. That is one of the things, you're exactly right. It's one of the things that you're afforded the opportunity to do when you travel alone. You don't have
Hmm.
to worry about anybody else's schedule. And if you
Yeah.
want to stare at a door, stare at the door, you know?
Wow. Well, I hope I get to do that someday. I'm gonna have to win the lottery first, but
Well, the good news about the Camino is it's pretty inexpensive and you can do it for a couple $1,000. And as
wow,
a month of travel for a couple $1,000 is pretty good.
that is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be worth saving up for.
Mhm.
Or
Mhm. Absolutely.
at least get as far as you can anyway.
Yeah, and you don't have to do the whole thing in one shot. That's the other thing, right? Do it in
Yeah.
sections. It's worthwhile.
Yeah. Did you train to do it? Did you
I,
at all
I'm
or?
pretty physical. So I exercise, 6 to 7 days a week. So I
Yeah.
go to the gym and I swim and I walk. But yes, before I went, I did some longer walks because I don't
Mhm.
usually walk 10 to 15 miles a day
Yeah,
or
I'll
if
walk like two
18
miles or
miles a day.
something at
Yeah.
it.
But it's funny because I think if you're in good physical shape,
Hmm.
it's absolutely manageable. And the truth is, I met people who really weren't, and they still made it work for them. I
Wow.
met a guy who had pushed his wife in a wheelchair the entire walk.
I mean,
She
even
had
up the
always,
Pyrenees?
absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely. And she had always dreamed of walking the Camino. and she
Yeah.
had muscular dystrophy and couldn't do it.
It's
So
amazing.
yeah, so he helped her get there with his boys as support. It was really great, really amazing story.
So tell me about your book before we end, before they kick me off of here.
So the Camino journey is the book, is the story that I write about in Estrellas. And Estrellas means stars. The title comes from an experience that I had in a little town called Carrión de los Condes. And in that town, one of the things that people know about that town when they prepare is that there are singing nuns. So I was excited to go hear the nuns sing. I thought the nuns were going to be singing. What I found out was actually it was a sing along with all the pilgrims. And it was really an extraordinary experience. And after we sang and we shared stories of why we were walking and where we came from, people from all over the world, all different languages. It was really pretty remarkable. We went to mass, and I was raised Catholic, so that's common experience for me. After mass, one of the sisters that we had sang with earlier in the evening said to us that she had a little present for us, and she gave us a paper star.
Oh,
And that paper star, she said, this is to remind you that you are the light. And your job is to shine your light brightly so
uh-huh.
that others can have light in the darkness. That's your job. I was really struck by that. And then she said something that I thought was really powerful, particularly in this time where we're living in an environment where things are really difficult for many of us.
Hmm.
He said that when we join together, we can light even the darkest night. So when we shine our lights together, when the light that we have is shared with the light that your neighbor has, we can brighten the darkness. And I was struck as a social worker, that's the life that I've chosen. I've been spending my entire professional career trying to help lift people up. So it resonated for me, but it also reminded me that it goes beyond a profession. It really is about humanity. And how do we light the darkness for one another? The book is really the encapsulation of that. All the stars, all the estrellas that I met as I walked, how they lit the darkness for me, the lessons that I learned as I walked, the people that I met, from Kwang in South Korea to Smita in India to Debbie and Pat right next door to my state in California from Arizona, Connor and Emma from Ireland, so many people that I met, Mark from Australia, that shared a little bit of their light with me and really made a difference in my life. And I think I made a difference in their lives as we walked and talked and shared our experience.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, I
So
do
the
have to
story,
end. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say very quickly, the story
Yeah.
really takes place on the Camino. So you get to hear a little bit about the places that you will go to. There are beautiful illustrations that are part of it that were made for me by a lovely artist, but also these very intricate stories of human beings and of people. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. Estrellas, it's called Moments of Illumination Along El Camino de Santiago.
Oh, I
And the
love
other
it.
thing I want to mention before we get off is I have a podcast that came out of walking. And the
Oh,
podcast is called From Sparks to Light. It is a podcast about people making a difference in their communities. And so I interview people around the world who are spreading light, who are shining their light so that others can be lifted out of the darkness. And so that was just another thing I wanted to share today.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I love it. I'm definitely going to put links to all of that in the description. And I just want to thank you so much. I got the notification that your meeting will end and, so I got to get off, but thank you so much.
What a treat. Thanks so much, Rebecca, for having me.
All right.